I'm going to show you everything you need right now to build a profitable funding business. And maybe you're not getting much traction in real estate right now, and it's probably because you're trying to solve problems that might not even exist. Most entrepreneurs, you only need one thing to outpace your competition and start crushing. But if you don't focus on it now, you may never create the opportunities that you're looking for. And I know this because I saw so many people get left behind while I was growing my transactional funding business to six-figure months over the past 2 years. So I'm going to show you the steps you can take today to right the ship and put yourself on track to start making money and buy back the time that was rightfully yours to begin with. Whenever I speak with people struggling to make money in transactional funding, there's a few common themes that we go over every single time. And the way I learned to overcome that was literally just opening my eyes. I saw so many people printing money in the short-term lending space, so logically, I figured if they can do it, so can I, and then I went out and proved that. And you can do the same thing. But the first thing you need to do in order to get there is quit making excuses and just get to work. Let's talk about the only 6 things you need to build a solid business from day one, starting with our most forgotten pillar ever, and that's just confidence. And you're probably like, confidence? Why are we talking about confidence? What about raising capital and contracts and deals and all of these other things I need? Exactly. That's why we talk about this first, because it's what so many people miss, and then they get down the line and they're like, I don't know why I wasn't able to make any money, wasn't able to make this business work. It's because you didn't even know what you were talking about to begin with, and that's okay. That's what we're here to work on. People see some ad or a video or whatever it might be, and they're like, ooh, big returns, I want to do that, so let me just go talk about it, pretend like I'm doing it, right? But that doesn't actually do anything. The thing that's going to separate you, especially early on in building this business, is just knowing the inner workings of the business itself. And that doesn't take some degree or level of, genius. It just takes the ability to take a step back and say, you know what? I'm not just going to go start trying to generate these random leads before I know what's going on. I'm not just going to go start telling everybody I know what I'm doing when I have no idea how to back it up. I'm not going to talk about it before I have everything in place. I'm just going to figure out how this thing actually works. It's literally that simple. The number one thing that I start with when I'm teaching people, and we'll go high level here, is just a transaction timeline. So many people, actually everybody in the real estate space needs money. Fact, right? Everybody needs money. They need money for a fix and flip. They need private money lenders. They need mortgages, whatever it might be. Money runs the real estate world. That's why I think this is the greatest business ever to be in, because it will always be needed in real estate. However, you need to know what type of money is which. And one of the biggest separations that I can give you is the difference between asset protected lending and escrow protected funding. Asset protected lending is things like mortgages and DSCR loans and hard money loans and private money loans. In fact, what do all of those end in? Loan. Because what happens is if you go default on something like that, the person, the bank, whatever, the entity can take over that asset, that home, in order to pay themselves back. Transactional funding is not that. Transactional funding occurs before the property is purchased, meaning if I was to give somebody, let's say I fund their EMD, right? Would getting their property help me? No. Why? Because they haven't bought the property. So how am I protected? I'm protected through escrow, okay? And we can go down this whole line of, okay, well, if you're protected through escrow, then what does the timeline look like? What contracts are you using? How are you protected? And that's exactly what I want you to start with when it comes to confidence, is understanding what type of funding is what, so that if somebody comes to you and says, I need money for 6 months, you can immediately say, okay, that's not EMD, that's not transactional funding, that's some sort of a gap loan, private money loan, whatever it might be. And then in that conversation with them, you become the educated one, right? You know what you're talking about. I know this seems simple, but I promise most of you guys watching this do not have the level of confidence it takes to go from that position and start actually closing deals. And again, the reason why this is so crucial when you're getting started. I mean, it all comes down to building your house on the rock, right? Building a solid foundation. If you go out and you spend the next 6 months trying to generate leads, but in that time, you can't articulate things to people, they don't trust you, they're not actually listening to what you're saying because you don't know what you're saying, then you are gonna come to me and say, oh, well, there's no deals out there, right? And I've got about 1,000 things I can show you to prove that that's not true. So if you think there's no deals, but there's actually too many deals to handle, where's the disconnect? It's your confidence. You haven't mastered the subject of transactional funding. And if you haven't mastered it, or at least mastered it to a level of what I would call being dangerous, right? If you haven't done that, then you're not going to be able to go out and be effective in this business. You have to start with the confidence itself in order to build this thing up. And those of you guys that are watching this, and you can't explain every step of what EMD funding would look like. You can't explain every step of a double closing, why somebody would need a double closing, who we work with, what issues you can run into, a seller carryback or the stack method. You don't know how that works. First of all, again, to be clear, that is fine. That just means you are one of most people, right? That you don't understand how that works. But what's not fine is going out, spending all of your money on these things that do absolutely nothing for you, right? You try and make some fancy website and you get a logo and you go waste money on business credit and build this whole LLC thing. And then you come to me and say, oh, Ryan, I'm ready to go in this business. No, you're not. You've done nothing. If you don't have confidence, you don't have the first pillar, and none of this other stuff matters until you have it. Because if you have confidence, you can go generate leads. And if you can generate leads, you can make more money than you can imagine without a website, without any of your own money, without even contracts, without any of that stuff, just by starting with those two foundational principles. I'd like to think you can watch other videos on this channel about how transactional funding works to get started, or talk with other people. And if you don't think I do well enough, I try my best for you. But either way, go get that information, learn how it works. Don't skip the most important step, or else you'll just feel like you're getting work done, but you're not actually getting anything done. And that's our first pillar. It's confidence. Now, the second thing is credibility. You need credibility to run this business. Why? First of all, credibility is pretty much important in anything, right? When you go buy a product on Amazon, you typically look for the one that has good ratings. If you are going to take your car into the mechanic, you're looking for the one that has good ratings. You are looking for people that are either backed up with reviews, or they come with, referrals from other people, or whatever it might be. And that all boils down to credibility. And the reason why that's amplified in this business is because a transactional funder, fundamentally, your job is to unlock the ability for other investors to make money. Let's take a double close, for example. Somebody's double closing on a property, they're gonna make 100 grand. The only way they can make that 100 grand is if they successfully double close, meaning that they have to come up with, let's say, $500,000. If you go to somebody and they trust you to execute on that $500,000 up front so that they can make $100,000 spread, and you fail, you've just destroyed their business, right? And probably months and months of work on their end. And so because of that, people are not going to work with you if you don't have credibility. They're not just going to say, oh yeah, I'm sure you can figure this out. No, they're going to want proof, right? And there's three main ways that I've experienced and that I've learned that you can create that credibility. The hardest way, but the most effective, number one, is you go do a bunch of deals. I'm blessed to say, in the position I'm in now, that if somebody doesn't trust my credibility, I can give them a few hundred HUD statements showing deals that I've closed, executed on, exactly how they work, plus, testimonials and whatever else. Obviously, that's the hardest one, right? Most of you, if not all of you watching this, are like, well, I don't have a few hundred of those. Great. The second thing that you can do for credibility is fake it till you make it. Now, you got to be careful with this one, but I would be lying if I said I had never done this. Pillar number one, if you build up your confidence, then you can establish a level of credibility without necessarily paperwork backing it up, just by being able to execute and speak professionally and correctly about the things that you're doing. If somebody says that they need EMD funded and you know exactly what they need to do in order to work with you, then they're going to say, okay, well, this person, didn't just, wake up under a rock this morning. They at least know how the process works. You can use that to a T, but you still have to be able to execute. You still have to have access to capital. You still have to know how the whole process works. And so you really have to be the expert if you're going to play that game. And the third one, the simplest one by far, is that you just simply use the credibility of other people through partnerships, right? You partner with somebody who has proven credibility. You become the person that's either doing lead generation for them, or managing the deals, communicating on the deals, whatever. You fulfill a role, but you can borrow other people's credibility, and then within the snap of a finger, you can go from somebody with no credibility to somebody with a lot of credibility simply by partnering with people who do. That's how people deal with influencers and building up their companies that are unknown, and marketing in general. That's oftentimes what people do, and it's also what I found to be incredibly effective in this field. In fact, I did a lot of that when I was getting started, and now I help other people do the same thing. So let me show you what it looks like to borrow somebody else's credibility or partner with somebody to get that credibility. Okay, so check this out. This is my website. If you haven't seen it, iPhoneWise.com, very, very basic website. This is where I bring all of my deals through, right? And if you look on here, this gets updated every so often with just the people that we're closing deals with, how much money we're funding on those deals, how many deals we've closed, whatever. Obviously, clear credibility there. We also have links in here for showing, HUD statements and all that stuff. You can see as you go through the website that we've got our forms and everything automated on the back end. We'll talk more about that. and everything's there, right? So why do you care? What does this mean for partnering with credibility? Well, what I've done with a lot of people is I've given them my credibility to partner with me through my funding business. So in the snap of a finger, you can see this website looks the exact same, right? It's the same website, but it's got their logo, it's got their colors on it, but it's got our terms, our credibility down here, our FAQs. It's got everything that we've done over here in my business, but they're now using that. And I do that with hundreds of people. Hundreds of people have access to these websites. I call them white labels, right? Where they can borrow my credibility and have people bring them deals and work through the things that I've already done so that in the snap of a finger, they gain that credibility. That's just one example, right? You could do that with me. You could do that with other people simply by finding the people that are already finding success and starting there. And then guess what? That's not a crutch for you to use forever, right? It's an opportunity to get started faster. You use that credibility, you grow off of that credibility, and then you do enough deals to then what? Use your own credibility, and then you help other people do the same thing, and that's the cycle that you go through, right? So that's our pillar number 2, is simply the credibility to pull these kinds of things off and be able to prove to people who need to trust you, who need proof, and who need money that you can execute on the things that you say you can do. The next thing that we're going to talk about is funds. And all of you want to ask me about this all the time. And I get why, because you're like, how am I supposed to build this business if I don't have any money? So let me answer that very clearly. One of the biggest mistakes that people make is either A, assuming that they can't get into transactional funding because they don't have money, or B, trying to get into transactional funding with the wrong type of money. This is something that I completely understand is hard to grasp until you get into this business, which is why I'm sitting here telling you it to hopefully help you understand this. Transactional funding is one of the fastest moving and most unpredictable businesses. And the reason why, let's talk about double closes. They're just easy to talk about, right? I'll get a double close that's a $10,000 piece of land, right? Somebody wants us to double close on it. They are buying it for 10,000, reselling it for 15 grand. Super cut and dry, very quick and easy. On that same day, I could get a double close for $26 million. And this is a real story, by the way, which is why I'm telling you. I can get a double close for $26 million. Now, on that same deal, because we make a percentage of the money being brought, I usually do about 1.5% on those deals, right? So if a $26 million deal came in and got funded, we would make about $400,000. Massive, right? But you can't do that if you are operating solely off of a fixed amount of money. And this is what I just don't think enough people grasp this. A lot of you come to me and say, oh, you know, Ryan, I've got $10,000 saved up and I want to get into transactional funding. I've got $50,000 saved up. I've got $100,000. I've got $500,000, whatever the number is. I've got business credit, which by the way, is not very helpful in these deals, but whatever it is that you think you have saved up, you are fundamentally wrong to think that that is going to help you grow this business. Because if you have, let's say $50,000, you've got a line of credit, right? For $50,000. And you're like, I want to get into this funding business. What are you going to do if a $100,000 deal hits your desk? You're going to pass on the deal? That's an easy $10,000, $15,000 in profit and you're just going to pass on it? No. Why would you pass on those deals? So regardless of if you have money saved or not, trying to operate off of your own one source of funds is a very poor way to build this business, because you're just going to hold yourself back and you're not going to be able to leverage on these huge opportunities. I mean, you could sit here for a year and not do a deal and then find that $26 million deal and 400 grand in profit, right? And then you would split that obviously with the person bringing the funds and all this other stuff. You know, we can get into the capital raising thing, right? So if you're not going to be doing it yourself and some little dinky business line of credit or whatever is not actually going to help you in this business, then what do you need to do? Well, first of all, you need to build up credibility, right? You can't go raise $1 million or $10 million or $50 million from somebody if you don't have proof that you can execute, which is why, again, it all goes back to that second pillar. However, once you prove that you can execute on these things, you can raise capital through partnerships. The easiest partnerships you can do is with people that already are doing deals, and you can bring them deals. It's basically the same thing I was talking about with the website, right? You can bring them deals. They can fund the deal for you because they already know how it works. That's like the lowest tier. The next tier up would be using people's capital that don't know how the process works, which means they're now fully entrusting you as the operator to execute on that. That's going to take more time and credibility. And people think, oh, you know, it must be so hard to raise capital. It is harder to raise capital for things like apartment buildings or houses or whatever, because you're keeping that capital for a long time. But do you have any idea how long a double close lasts? 2 hours. An EMD deal at the longest, 30 to 45 days. So you are raising capital for a way shorter period of time than you are with those long-term deals, which means there is way more capital available for you. And what I've learned through experience is that that capital will start getting thrown at you once you prove that you can execute. In the meantime, you're just getting started. How do you get access to capital? Well, there's multiple ways, just like with the credibility, that you can do it. Number one, and the simplest by far, is just partnering with other people. Now, I have a free group on School. If you're not already in it, it's the first link in the description on this video. And inside of that free group, there is access to all the capital that you need to close these deals when you partner with other people. Now, those partnership splits and things like that, that's up to you, but we've created a community. At the time of recording this, there's over 6,000 people in there, all working together to get these deals funded and closed. And so if you can find the deals, you will get the capital for it. But eventually you want to gain your own access to capital sources as well. Now, if we look back here on the site, just like with what I was talking about before, what these people can do is if they go on their white labeled website and somebody goes in to submit a funding request here, and they go into this form, and let's say they needed, $1 million, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there you go, $1 million for a double closing. They can come in and they can submit this request with all the information. And what will happen was that they can partner with me on the back end to make sure that money gets funded. Now, what is that deal? Well, if we go to in here, you can see, for example, with, let's say, a double closing, that we can fund double closings up to $100 million. So they now have this massive capital access that's going to allow them to functionally run a business without having to stress about every single piece, because there's a lot of pieces, right? We're going to talk about the 6 pillars in this video, and all these different pieces, if you try and do them all at once, you're probably not going to end up making any progress at all. But if you can chip away one by one by one by one, you build up the confidence, you build up your credibility. Now you get access to a capital source that's going to help you. Then you can pull a lot more off in a much shorter amount of time. And so that's our third pillar. You got to have access to some sort of capital. Please don't make it your own. You will not go very far. I don't care if you're a millionaire. You will always find deals that are more money. And if you don't learn how to get access to capital to help you scale this business, then you're not going to scale it. So that's number 3, access to capital. Boom. Let's move on. Number 4, the fan favorite, is deal flow. You gotta have deals coming in, guys. Again, I mentioned this at the beginning of the video. You can go home and you can show your grandparents at Christmas your nice, pretty website with your cool business credit line that makes you feel good, but it's not ever going to make you $1. The only thing that will is having deals come in. That's it. And if you don't generate deal flow, you don't actually have a business. So where does deal flow come from? Well, there's only 4 primary ways that you're going to be generating leads in this business. Number 1 is cold outreach. That means reaching out to people who don't know you. If you've ever gotten those random DMs from people on Facebook and Instagram or wherever else, and you're like, who is this person? Why are they talking to me? That's a cold DM. Same thing with cold emails, cold calls. It's all cold. You're like, who the heck is this person? Number 2 would be warm outreach. That's people that you already know. That's somebody that you've connected with in the past, somebody that you have in the contacts of your phone, somebody who has your email address that you've spoken with, whatever it might be. It's warm. When they reach out to you, you're like, I know who that person is, versus what the heck is going on. Third one is free content. That's what this video is right here. That's me doing one thing that's going to be seen by not a lot of people, but at least a few of you guys, that gets more out there with the same amount of effort. And then number 4, my personal favorite way to generate leads, is building a referral system. Now, I'm going to screen share again. I'll show you guys inside of Fund to Freedom. This is my operations, right? My back end, my paid community for building these businesses out. And you can see in here, if we go to phase 3, so we already talked about what? Building the business, confidence. Now we're going to phase 3, which is lead generation. If we go into lead generation, you'll see some of the things that I've put together in here, right? So first of all, the core 4, that's what we just talked about: cold leads, warm leads, all that good stuff. You can see the warm leads there, the free content, building out your referral structures. And after we go through that training, we get into things like the rule of 100, which is how we're using leverage, choosing our outreach methods, our consistency, increasing deal flow through getting more inbound leads, right? I'm not going to go through all of this, but basically all of that training. And then you get this information, right? And guess what? Information is out there. Okay, you can find this information on YouTube. Obviously, you're watching this video for free, right? But what do you do with it? So what I do on the calendar, you can see here, every single Wednesday, we do live lead generation trainings where we actually generate leads in real time. It's every single week, every single Wednesday. Then at the end of the day, we sit down and do hot seats where we review what people are doing to generate leads, what's working, what's not, and all of that good stuff. Now, why do you care about this? You need to get 2 things to generate leads. And this is after you do the first 3 pillars we've talked about. If you haven't done those, forget about it. But if you've done those things and you want to start generating leads, first of all, you need to just actively start generating leads in every way possible. The lowest hanging fruit is cold leads with the lowest effectiveness. However, it still works, and you work your way up to the free content and building out referral systems. I've got plenty of videos on that stuff as well. In so doing, you need to connect with other people that are doing this so that you can get the mental clarity as to what it is you should be doing. Hey, this is not working right now. This is. Wouldn't you like to know what's working and what's not so that you can go do more of that thing, find which parts of it fit into your schedule and actually make that work? That's what having community is all about. That's what actually actively investing and working on these things is for, is so that you can build that up. And so whatever it might be with deal flow, you have to be able to get the information, number one, be willing to get the information, and then number two, be willing to act and refine that information. The other thing I have to give you guys for the fourth pillar on deal flow is that you have to stop fishing in the same pond. You just have to. If you guys are watching this video and you're in a mentorship or a group or community, or maybe you go to like this one local meetup, right? Whatever it may be, you could not have a smaller subset of people than you have right now. You couldn't have a smaller subset. These people are simply 1% of 1% of 1% of all the real estate investors in the United States. If you all talk to the same people in a little circle, right, at your little events, then you're gonna, again, what are you gonna say? Oh, there's no deals out there. This market is saturated. The market's saturated because half of you are all sitting in the same circle talking to each other, going around like, oh, there's no deals to be done. You gotta go outside of that circle. You gotta get uncomfortable. You have to connect with new people. You have to go to new meetups. You have to get outside of whatever universe you're living in and fish in different ponds. The second I started doing that, my business exploded because there is so many people. Again, everybody in real estate needs money. You just need to find the people that don't already have money sources or that need better money sources or better execution or whatever it might be, and work with those people first. If you do those things in lead generation and you don't stop, you will start to generate leads for your business, and then we can move on to our next pillar. Okay, number 5 is contracts. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I made when I was getting started. I actually had contracts, but I had garbage contracts. And what I mean by that is that contracts are an interesting thing because you can sign contracts all day, every day. But the question is, when you actually need those contracts to be used for something, are they going to do anything? Are they going to work, right? Otherwise, it's just a placebo, right? It might make you feel better, but it's not necessarily going to save you any money. And when I started, I used contracts from people that were not doing this business on a daily basis. And so what happened was I thought the contracts would work. I got into some bad situations with deals. I tried leveraging the contracts. It turns out they did absolutely nothing, and now my money was gone. And that was a very painful experience that I don't wish upon anybody else. And no, it did not just happen once. It happened a good bit of times when I was first getting started because I was using those things. And I used that, and I started connecting with people who were actually closing deals, right? They were funding EMD and doing double closes and all this stuff. And I said, what are you using? Let's look at that. Let's review that. We brought attorneys in, and eventually I was able to create my own contracts that I have now used multiple times to get people to pay us back when the money was lost, to have title companies have to do whatever we told them to do, to avoid having to go to a judge or court or whatever else garbage. And we have never lost money. Knock on wood. We've never lost money since we started doing that in our business. And it's not because we're geniuses or, attorneys built this stuff, not me, but it was simply, let me actually talk to people who are doing these deals on a daily basis and not the people who are just talking the talk, but they're not actually walking the walk. Changed everything for me. I now have access to all of those contracts, and I share those access with people. You can see inside of here, we'll jump back down to Fund of Freedom. If we go down right here, you will see the funding contracts section. And if I open it up, there's a whole bunch of different contracts in here. There's our lead generation agreements, our EMD agreements, our PSA provisions, all these words that you don't actually care about. But the point is, all of these contracts are in this resource center so that you have them, so that when you get to the point where you need them, you can use them. But there's another thing that I have to add to that. Having a contract doesn't mean anything if you don't know how to use it. It doesn't mean anything because you could just fill it out, but if you fill it out improperly or at the wrong time, or you don't get something done, or you don't understand how it works, and you don't understand how to use it, who to give it to, right? All of this stuff, then it's not going to do anything. And so you don't just need contracts, you need contract training. You need to learn how to use those contracts. Now, again, obviously I offer that to people. However, you can get that from other sources as well. The reason I'm sharing this with you is that you need to know if you're using a contract, where did you get it? Who created it? And do you have proof that that contract has been used in situations where money would have been lost had the contract not existed? You can connect with the person, with the attorney who created it. You can get your own created if you want, whatever you want to do. But do you have proof that it's actually going to work when you need it? Because otherwise you may feel good right now, but I've been on the other side and I'm telling you, take the time now to get that set up properly, know how to use it, know why it says what it says, why it exists, and how you can execute on those things so you can get that done. If you want to have that all simplified, then let's move to step number 6, and I'll talk about how you can do exactly that. Our final pillar for this video is automation. Now, there's a lot of talk around automation, and I have used it to significantly boost my business in pretty much every single way. But I want to talk to you guys about it, about how I use it and how you can use it as well, and why in some capacity it's needed in order for you to grow a business like this. Now, if you look, again, we'll jump in here one more time, you can see the phases that I run through for this business. We build the business first, then we get through the confidence, then we do lead generation, then we get to systems in the next phase. And so it's not that you have to start with this necessarily, but when you're building, you want to get to a point where you have these things. Why? Let's start with what we were just talking about with contracts, right? If you need things sent out in a certain order to people, right? And you need them done in a timely manner, right? You can't fund until this is signed and sent there and that's signed and whatever it might be. Then automating that process is going to make your life and your ability to grow this business a lot more feasible, because you don't have to go look and say, oh my gosh, well, I've got a meeting at my W-2, so I didn't get this thing sent out, which, by the way, I'm speaking from experience, right? When I was doing engineering and I was starting to try and build this business, I used automations to be able to get those things sent out and handled while I was in meetings and working and, doing normal life stuff. And so that's one of the biggest things there. The other thing is just being able to organize and communicate clearly with people. If somebody asks you for money, you need to be able to get back to them immediately, because speed is, again, everything in this business revolves around speed. And so if we look here, I'm going to pull up what is called Deal Sync. So Deal Sync is the automations that I've built on the Go High Level platform to run my entire business. This is a test version, right? So if you look in here, this is what it looks like. You have people come in, they submit a deal right here, and then you can go in and you can click on it, whether it's EMD or transactional funding or whatever, and you can go through those deal details, and you can figure out if it's a deal that you're able to fund based on your funding box and whatever else metrics. And then you either say that it's missing info or you can approve it. And as you go down this line here from approving to funding to closing the deal, what you want to be able to do is automate and execute. So sending out emails, sending out contracts, getting the proper signatures, collecting invoices for payments. All of that stuff is automated through this system so that you can have these deals coming in and moving without you having to constantly attend to them, which I know is a pain in the butt, right? And so that's what Deal Sync looks like for me and for everybody inside of Fund of Freedom that's using it, is just automating and executing on those things. Now, how else can you do that? I mean, you can literally go to, Google Sheets, right? And you could just keep track of stuff in here for what you're doing. Now, this isn't going to automate things. You can also go to Zapier.com, log in here, but Zapier.com, and you can use that to automate some stuff as well if you're like slightly nerdy. But for those of you that are like, well, I'm not tech savvy at all, that's fine. You can use, obviously I've built Deal Sync so that you can use all of my systems and automations automatically, but you can also just simplify that down to, if somebody comes to you, are you going to be able to effectively communicate with them regardless of your situation in a timely manner? That's it. That's really the metric that we're looking for here. That's the 6 things that you need. Just to recap, you got to start with confidence. From there, you need credibility so that people trust you to do deals. You need the funds to execute on those deals. Next up, you need contracts to protect your money. And then you need some sort of systems and automations to put all of those things together. Now, to close out this video, I want to talk about some things that you don't need and why you don't need them. And the first thing that I'll talk about with that is business credit. Now, I already brought this up with funding. For some reason, people are convinced that they need business credit to build this business. The reason is because they've been sold this idea that, oh, if you don't have any money, you can just go spend a few $1,000s on this business credit program that's going to magically get you access to 50 grand. And then all of a sudden you can build this business. And so what happens, and I know this is some of you guys watching this because trust me, I've had this conversation a time or 2,000, is then you're like, oh, okay, well, I'll just go apply for this business credit and wait a year. And once I get that, then I can start my business. And then you don't do anything. You don't learn to generate leads. You don't build up your credibility. You have no idea what's going on and your business gets absolutely nowhere. And then you finally get the business credit And then you come to me and you're like, all right, I'm ready to go. And I'm like, that's super cool, but that business credit's not going to do anything for you because you can't use that with speed on these deals. It's not going to allow you to execute on every deal, only on like a very small subset. And you're not going to be able to actually clearly bring people in if you can't articulate what it is you can fund for them with that. You do not need it. I do not have it. And I have built this business up to a 7-figure business, so I'd like to be able to say I have proven that that is the case. The second thing that you don't need is a fancy LLC structure. Again, this is a waste of money when you're getting started. Yes, you need LLCs. No, I'm not an attorney. I'm not giving you legal advice. You should go consult somebody else on that. But what I can tell you is that I have done plenty of deals with people who have made boatloads of money that didn't have some sort of fancy system set up. You can do these deals in your personal name when you're getting started. I would way rather you spend all of your time and energy and focus on actually generating leads and building up your confidence in this business before you go start spending money. Because what are you gonna do if you decide to move on from this? If you give up on the business? You just have all this stuff that you've paid for that you've done nothing with. So instead of putting yourself in that position to give up, how about you build up the confidence and the foundation first so that you don't have to, right? If you can do that, then you will avoid a lot of the pitfalls that come with this stuff. And the other thing is people that think, oh, well, I just need a ton of time. You're sorely mistaken. Building this business is not easy. And those of you who want an easy pass, you can go buy some program that promises you that AI is going to do it all for you. And then you can come back here in a couple of months when you realize that's not how the world works. You have to work hard, but you don't necessarily have to spend all of your time. You just have to be more strategic and increase your leverage. What I mean is outbound versus inbound leads, cold leads versus warm leads, right? One-to-one versus one-to-many. The more strategic you are with who you speak to, how you speak with them, how you're articulating what you can do, and the referral networks and things that you build up, the less work you have to do in real time. We have people that I'm working with that are making more money than you can imagine while working full-time jobs, working some crazy hours. They've got kids, they've got responsibilities, they're going on vacations, whatever it might be. That does not impact your business as long as you plan ahead. You don't need time, you don't need fancy LLCs, you don't need business credit. You do need the 6 pillars that we talked about. And if you're watching this video and it's been at all helpful for you, there's 2 things that I can give you. Number 1, make sure you join my free group on School. It is right below this video. It's the first link in the description, and you'll get access to live trainings with me and more of all this stuff that I talked about. And besides that, again, I hope this has been helpful, and YouTube is gonna say that you should watch this video next, which should help you start successfully with pillar number 1, which is building up your confidence.